Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly McLemore.
All right, good evening, and welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses from across the country. I am your host, Kimberly McLemore, CEO and founder of the Women's Small Business Initiative, LLC, and an award-winning author. And welcome to another night of sharing. With us, we have female independent recording artist, songwriter, drummer, band leader, and producer Tedi Brunetti. To say Tedi Brunetti has seen everything during her career in music would be a vast understatement. The drummer, singer, and songwriter from Pittsburgh grew up listening to songs on a transistor radio while banging away on a hamper and old hat boxes. Describing herself as a sober Janis Joplin meeting Steely Dan in Memphis, it wasn't long before Tedi was touring with the New York City's The Impalas, Toronto's infamous B-Girls, and performed with Isis Carol MacDonald before finally deciding to launch her own solo career. Tedi's current music project is a full-length album titled Queen of Pittsburgh, released on July 20th. So, without further ado, please help me welcome to my platform, Miss Tedi Brunetti. Hey, Tedi, how are you?
I'm great, Kimberly. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing great, and I'm extremely excited to talk to you this evening. We already had some great conversation before we started this conversation that we're going to do now. So I can't wait to share a little bit more of that with all the listeners this evening. But before we go down that path, why don't you tell my listeners a little bit more about who Tedi Brunetti really is?
Well, I'm that funky old grandma you wish you had. I mean, that's actually how I got back into my music career again. I mean, I did music in the 70s and 80s in New York City. I've been writing songs since I was 11. And so always wanted to pursue a recording career. And so I met my husband in a band, and we moved to New York City, and I did everything there. Like you said, those bands that I had played with, Carol MacDonald, the Impalas, the B-Girls. The B-Girls toured with The Clash. Mick Jones from The Clash and Deborah Harry from Blondie actually produced some EPs for that band. And I wrote for that band, so I was one of the songwriters, so they recorded one of my songs with, I got to be in this big studio with Mick Jones, and it was exciting, And in the 70s and 80s, New York City, there was a starving artist community, and it was quite a wonderful time to be in New York. And it was still affordable, You could still do it. It's pretty cost prohibitive now,
Right.
But, a closet's like $1 million, right? So... So we had 2 kids, and I'm Italian. I'm from a big Italian family, and there was a turn of events where my manager at the time had another baby, and he had to make money, so he pursued a new business, and he put all his time and energy into that. I had recorded my first album, and New York was getting cost prohibitive for us. And so we decided to come back to Pittsburgh and raise the kids. I've lived my life in stages,
Right.
So I feel like I've had like maybe 3 or 4 lifetimes already. So, and it's a blessing,
Right.
It's not a bad way to do it, I got to say. I don't regret it. Because whatever was paramount at the time got my fullest attention,
Exactly.
And so I have no guilt over mother's guilt, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because when you're trying to have when you're trying to have a big career, I mean, I had a press agent and management and all this stuff. We were playing all the big clubs. I was recording and thought who I was and all this stuff in New York City. When you have babies, it's not about the babies. Yeah, I mean, you have a career, You know, it's about you. It's not about the baby. So,
right. That's right.
I mean, and I hadn't had a hit record. I didn't have the budget that like Mariah Carey does. You know what I mean? So I didn't have any help. You know, and so you know, we just decided to. We just loved our kids and our family life, so we did that. And I went back to school for ultrasound when I came to Pittsburgh. So I've done the yin and yang of sound. I did echocardiograms and vascular ultrasound for 20 years, and then retired, 9 years ago maybe, and got back playing again. And here we are. We decided to do this album because I started writing again, and I told my husband, I want to record again because I want our grandkids to know that we were cool once, you know? So that was the whole idea behind the Queen of Pittsburgh album. It was like a legacy thing. And then it turned out so well because I recorded it with Dean Allen Sargent and Michael Hennigan, and they produced my first album in New York City, like 35 years ago, however long it was, right? And so, you know, it's come full circle for us, and you know, we've had a ball doing it, and we're not finished yet. So
right.
You know, yeah. It's good.
Go ahead.
No, it's been an adventure.
Yeah, it has. It has. But the thing I love to hear that you're saying is that, you know, you're able to still live your dreams. And then even though you decided to have your family, it wasn't so much that you were putting your dreams on hold, but you knew the responsibilities of raising children. It's tough, could be very tough on the road. And I mean, people do it all the time, but I loved how you put them first and decided that, you know what, I will still be able to get back when I'm ready to sing again. I'm going to sing again. And that, like you said, is a blessing in its own, because you were very talented and you were still capable of doing other things in your life that, you know, when I heard you say you were doing echograms, I'm like, wait a minute, like, that's completely different than singing, you know? So you made a living. You know, you made a living for your family. And I think that's the most important part, because a lot of times people do want to live their dreams. And when you have children involved in to raise, you know, sometimes those children do get put on the back burner, and that is not always fair because they're not asked to be here. And I honestly believe that, you know, when you bring kids into the world, you owe them your full 100% responsibility to make sure that they live the best lives that they deserve to have. So, you know, definitely, applaud yourself continually, but to be the cool grandma, and then here you are, you've got a new album out. You've played with some phenomenal other bands. I mean, during the time that you were playing, I was still growing up. I was born in the late 60s myself. So, to come out and hear about the people that you were around, and I had those opportunities. That's pretty cool to know that I'm actually talking to a legend. So,
well, I wouldn't go that far, but I mean, I've seen some things. You know, it's just, you just have to keep waking up in the morning. That's all. You know.
Amen to that. Yes.
You know. And but I will say this. You know, the music that I got to hear growing up in the 60s, that's in the big, you know, I remember I was a little grade school kid when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan, you know.
Wow.
And so, I mean, I remember that night, you know, and it's like the radio back then, you would hear everything, you know, back to back. You would hear the Mamas and the Papas, then you'd hear Led Zeppelin, then you'd hear some folk singer, and then, you know, like Joan Baez, and then you'd hear, and then there were groups like the Monkees, and there were, you know, and Herman's Hermits, this kind of pop kind of acts, and then there were people like the Rolling Stones, and I mean, it was, you know, the British invasion. So, I mean, it was such a creative and wonderful time to grow up listening to music. In the radio, the pop culture of the day, you know.
Exactly.
It was, I think I got the best of it.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree. Yeah, the way that we heard music back then, it's completely different today. Even though I enjoy music today, but what we hear from the time frame that we were growing up. You hear some of those same beats, those same tunes, they're sampling from all the stuff that we grew up with, utilizing the music that they're, playing today.
Right. And that was one of the things that we focused on when we made this album was, I'm 69 years old. Mm-hmm. All right. I'm not hiding it.
Hey,
but, hey,
thankful for another day.
When people, honest to God, you'll be lucky if you live this long. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So we focused on, we wanted it to sound like real musicians playing real instruments. We didn't want it to sound like, I love today's pop music. I mean, no doubt, the beats are infectious. Mm-hmm. I'm a drummer,
Mm-hmm.
So of course I love it, you know what I mean? But I had to do my thing. I had to be true to myself and my roots. And it's taken me almost 70 years, but finally I'm comfortable in my own skin, and I'm comfortable being who I am
mm-hmm.
and making the music that I make, So
right.
my music's like blues influenced rock, like a classic kind of rock with which is blues influence, and some jazz overtones,
mm-hmm.
and that's what I do, and that's how I'm doing it. It's not really anything you haven't heard before, but
mm-hmm.
I'm a stylist. You know what I mean? I have my own, and I have a sound, because that's the art of what we're doing. Is
mm-hmm.
when I call myself a recording artist, that's the art, is the recording. All right,
exactly.
The way we recorded it, the way it's produced, the way the songs are written, the way they're arranged, the way I sang them, the way they're played. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, and we left no stone unturned. We worked very, very hard on this album. It was a joy. All right. I mean, it wasn't. I don't even feel right calling it work, but it is work.
Right,
you know. And when I say work, I mean we put the proper attention to it, and and I just love it. And the album turned out so great, like I said, that now here we decided to, well, let's, people liked it, and I was offered a few things here and there, and I was like, well, okay, let's do it. I mean, either you're all in or you're not,
That's right.
So now, no, I'm not retired. I'm in the music business.
But you know what? Retirement today is such a different word than what we've heard throughout the years. And I remember growing up and hearing, the golden years was, when you got to your 70s and above, and then that's when you could start enjoying life. That is not the same today. People are living longer. People are actually living their best lives when they hit their late, 60s and 70s and so forth. And
it's unbelievable.
It is. And that's the one thing that, I wanted to point out, because when you were talking about the fact that it's taken you 70 years to find yourself. And the reality of that is that you're finally, like you said, doing everything that you want to do. And you're okay with that. You're good within your own skin. And a lot of people don't realize that sometimes it does take that many years to see your dreams and fulfill your dreams and know that, what, I don't care what anybody else thinks about it. This is what I want to do. And, because we live in a world that is full of, criticism, and, you have to be this way, you have to be that way. Yeah. And what you're doing, like you said, this album is about leaving a legacy, proving to your kids and future grandkids and family members that, hey, you can do anything you want to do, no matter what the age is. And I love that spirit in you that you're sharing with everybody. So talk a little bit, though, about the journey of being a musician, because I'm sure that we have plenty of music artists out there listening, and they're saying themselves, I want to do this, but may not know how or don't know who that they should, talk to. Give them some insight on what it really means to live this type of life.
Well, it's can be lonely. I mean, for me, I'm a school musician. I went to college for a few years. I was a music major. And so I believe in taking lessons and developing your skill set that way. I mean, I don't think everybody has to, there's people that can't read music, and, they're wonderful, some of them. And, but that's the route that I had to take. And so there's a lot of hours for me because I want to play at a high level. So there's many hours of lonely practice. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So and that's okay. I mean, it's dedication. I've been watching the Olympics lately, so yeah. You know, I appreciate those athletes because I understand their training, you know. Mm-hmm. So I say try to develop your skills as best as you can. Talk to other musicians, you know. Find a community of people. Find people that are better than you. Talk to them and ask them the questions like you're asking me. What, you know, how did you get to be as good as you are, you know? Mm-hmm. And play with as many people as you can, play different styles. You'll find yourself, and, you know, that's what I've done. And that's all I can share is my own experience. But I still love it. I have a thing about drum technique, and I love everything about the drums. I love changing the drum heads and fixing the drums and tuning them up and getting different sounds and different kinds of snare drums. I have our youngest son is also a musician, and he plays drums, bass, and guitar, James Mason. He played on my album. As a matter of fact, on the Queen of Pittsburgh song, there's a father and son guitar solo section. Mm-hmm. My husband starts the solo, and then my son takes it out, you know, and it's fantastic. And yeah, I got to do some things like that on this album. I have a couple of my sisters singing background vocals on a few tunes, too. Mm-hmm. So that's always nice, you know. Right. When I hear it, it makes me smile, you know. Exactly. And but it can be hard. I mean, I don't like to. I mean, everybody will tell you with any kind of art, you know, maybe you should have something to back yourself up. But I know when you're young and you're possessed, when you get that bug to be a musician, there's no backup plan usually, you know. Right. But if you can stay open-minded, you know, and music is the beautiful thing about it is that you're able to do it your entire life. Amen. I think Van Cliburn was giving piano concerts when he was in his 90s. You know what I'm saying? Right. So it's a wonderful gift. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't try to play professionally or whatever, it enhances your life and your enjoyment. Emotionally, you know, it takes you different places. I mean, I love it, you know. I mean, I don't know how I would live without it, you know. Right. Yeah, it's definitely the ultimate thing that brings people together. But, you know, Tedi, talk a little bit about the business side of being in music. You know, a lot of people, you know, today it's easier to start their music careers because, you know, everybody can do everything through virtual, you know, they can get themselves out there much quicker. But, you know, even with all of that, once they get kind of past that and people start to pull for them, they want to, you know, do deals. Talk a little bit about the business side of that portion of the career and being a music artist, because, you know, I'm sure, you know, back then when you first started, you know, songwriting and owning your own songs and understanding all that type of stuff is definitely changed from there to today, but it's still something that people need to hear because, you know, owning your own rights is a huge difference in having the control that you might not have control back when you first started. Talk about how that's changed some and what advice would you give on that? Yeah, I mean, that's a big difference. That's a big difference for nowadays, the new music business, I call it, and the old school way of doing things. I mean, it's day and night, you know. It's still tough, all right? Mm-hmm. Even though you may own your own, you know, you own everything. You own the copyrights and the masters of your recordings and your videos and everything. You know, the streaming and all that stuff, musicians, artists are still being taken advantage of on some level. Mm-hmm. Just because, I mean, I think you make 0.0032 cents per stream. Oh, wow. You know, You know, now Lady Gaga, she gets 1 billion streams, so it adds up for her. But for the normal person, the thing that's great today is there's so many mid-level kind of artists. You know, there's opportunity. There's opportunity. Like you said, you know, if you have a phone or a computer, you know, you can get your music out there. And the cool thing about pop music is they're always looking for something new. You know, everybody's looking for the next new thing. So that gives everybody hope.
Right. Absolutely.
You know? Right. And it's very important to own your own copyrights and your masters. It's very important. Yeah, I mean, that's your legacy. That's what that's what you can pass down to your children, your grandchildren, whatever. You know, but sometimes it isn't always possible. I mean, people get in situations where these record companies, you know, they get offered some front money, and normally for the majority of people, that's all the money they ever see. Okay, but you know, you get in situations if you're a musician where if that's all you're doing and you're broke.
Right. That's
right. So when they offer you a lump sum that's, you know, $100,000, whatever it is, you know, it's, you know, you should take that money and buy a house. You know,
right. Put it to good use. You
know, but it's still a tough business.
Right.
But it is a business, and I've been studying it for the last couple of years, and I take seminars, webinars. There's so much information out there. If you're new or you're thinking of doing it, and the business side, unfortunately, if you're doing it on your own, if you don't have like a management team or something like that, which most of us don't, you know, we're independent artists. When they say independent, that means you're doing everything.
Right, that's right.
You're calling the photographer, and the artist. This has always been true, even for the people who do have managers or whatever. You know, the big time people. The artist is the low man on the totem pole. Everybody gets paid before you. The roadie gets paid. The light guy gets paid. The makeup artist gets paid. The video guy gets paid. The musicians. You know, if you have side men, they get paid. Everybody gets paid before you do. You're the last, you know.
Right.
Back in the day, I think if a musician, and I'm talking about people with hit records, if they were able to keep 5% of their gross, if they had 5% of their gross at the end of the day, that was about average. 5%. You know, and most people didn't do that. They made less than that. You would believe how, you know, how many stars that, you know, people you would recognize, recording artists, that had second and third mortgages. You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly.
Because they just, it's tough. It's a tough business. You have to know why you're doing it, you know. The business side for me, it takes up more time than creating the music, and that's sad. But there's a lot to it. You know, I'm hoping for myself, you know, getting my team together, and I do have a wonderful team of people. It isn't just me. All right.
Right.
I have a wonderful Rebel Technology. William McDuffie, he's a tech genius. Anything computer, he's unbelievable. This guy has a 3D printer. he's crazy. Computer guy. And BMHAC, my video team, they're a bunch of young guys who graduated Rutgers Film School. So they're bona fide filmmakers. My songs tell stories, so that's the kind of video I like to make. And my videos are they're state of the art. They're on a high level, you know, like the recordings are, and like the audio recordings of the music. Because I have producers that have 40 years experience.
Right.
And you can't get that when you're 20, so
right.
between all of us, we have a couple hundred years of experience, so, and it shows on this project, and I'm very proud of it and pleased with it that way. But it's getting this team together, getting the wheels together, getting all the gears in order, and getting everything to run smoothly. It takes time, and you have to be on top of it. You have to be vigilant, and I used to, at my age, the social media thing was a few years back. I never would have expected that I would be enjoying it like I am today. Because
right.
I look at it now, especially since COVID, right? We couldn't get out and see people. But it's just another way to build relationships. I had to change my attitude because I knew it wasn't going to go away.
Right.
And
right.
I think that's hard for people who are older, especially who are who are making music, because it's a paradigm shift, right?
Exactly.
And
that's right.
and you can't fight it. It's not going to go away. I mean, if you decide to do it, then you have to do everything. And that's a big part of it. So I've had to change quite a bit, my attitude, and I'm in a good place today. I'm pretty accepting of everything, and like I said, I love my social media friends, and we're having a ball. I'm learning every day. It's exciting. I feel fresh. It's renewing.
Right.
Gives me something to look forward to.
Exactly. But, what you're sharing is, very valid information. And it's, people need to understand that, you may start out at a high, but there's going to be a lot of in-betweens or maybe some lows. But at the same time, everything is a learning process, and you have to be willing to change your mindset. And that's exactly what you've done, because like you said, years ago, things weren't like this. And then as time has evolved, things have changed rapidly. And then, of course, with the pandemic and everything, that really put a huge change for people, and people had to stop and pivot. They had to make, changes that they weren't prepared for. But everything is a learning process. And if it's meant to be, and you're willing to put in the work and, the time, it all comes to, to the head. And here you are, like you said, you're living your best life. You're doing everything you want to do and had been doing in the past, and you've brought it full circle. So that's all a blessing. And, but Tedi, we're getting close here to the end of the show. But before you go, I want you to tell us a little bit about the song we're going to be hearing tonight, Evil Woman. I listened to it. I seen the video. I love it. I can't wait for you to share a little bit about what this video is talking about.
Well, that song, Evil Woman, it's kind of an ode to the 20-30 something. And it came out of several different places. We hadn't played music in a while, so about 5 years ago or so, we put together a little blues cover band just to go out and gig and see if we wanted to do it again. And we had a front singer, a man, and he had a girlfriend. And he had a few girlfriends at the time. He's happily married now. But this one girlfriend, she wanted to get serious with him, and he really didn't think she was the one, and whatever. So she started all this bad stuff on Facebook.
Oh no!
And social media, coming at him on, and she was going to come to our gigs and blah blah blah. So, that's where the Evil Woman came. I write from titles, all right? Okay. I write like Tin Pan Alley songwriters. That's how I learned to write songs. And I studied songwriting when I was in New York at ASCAP and with the Songwriters Guild. And that's, back in those days, that's how they taught you to write songs. So, I'd been writing since I was 11, but I was refining my skills, And so the Evil Woman, that's where the title came. And then as I was ruminating and having these thoughts about this song, the lyrics going through my head, I let things wash over me for a while. And I was getting my hair done at, I go to this very hip, I think it's the best hair salon in Pittsburgh. It's called Swank. And I go in there, and there's all these like 20 30-something hotties doing hair, and these girls, today it's like we talked, it was so different. It's so different, there's no rules anymore,
Right.
So whose boyfriend's in jail, who's going, who's doing this, who's, I'm married, he's cheating on me, I'm cheating on him. I mean, I was like, oh my God, I sit in there and I listen to all this stuff, and I'm entertained by these women, right? And they're all gorgeous, and they're very sweet girls. So I ended up making part of the video right there, and that's where I got some of the ideas for the lyrics. It was just from listening to their conversations,
Right.
And so it's my observations on the 20 and 30-something. And it turned out great. We ended up shooting part of the video right there in that salon. And,
okay.
And so why not, you see all these gorgeous girls, so why not use some of them in your videos,
Right.
So it was just a whole lot of fun,
Well, like I said, the video is nice, and it definitely looks good. And I can't wait to have everybody hear the audio portion of it. And of course, if they can go and find the video, so you tell everybody how they can see the video and provide some of your social media information.
Sure. You just go to TediBrunetti.com. That's TediBrunetti.com. And there's links to everything there. And or you can find me on Facebook or look at YouTube, Tedi Brunetti Official, Evil Woman, Tedi Brunetti. It'll come up. And I'm on all the streaming platforms. You can buy CDs from the website. And Spotify, whatever, Deezer, I'm on all of them. iHeart, yeah. So, the whole album's out now, and it's pretty easy to find.
Okay. Well, yes. Like I said, we're definitely going to be listening to that this evening right at the end. So I have one more thing for you, Miss Tedi. So I obviously love you and thank you for coming on to tonight's show. But do you have any last words for our listeners this evening?
Well, first, let me thank you, Kimberly, for this opportunity. It's very nice of you to have me on your show. I appreciate it. And I just say follow your heart, and you know in your heart what's right and what's wrong. Just do the next right thing, and you'll be okay.
Love it. Spoken like a real mom and grandma right there.
There you go.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, Tedi, again, I thank you for coming on and spending your evening with me. And, of course, like I said to everyone else, the listeners, we will be listening to Evil Woman this evening. But before I end the show, I always like to ask my listeners, what do you wish existed for you? What are you dreaming about? What are your goals? You know, if you need to start thinking about those goals instead of keeping them on the shelf, hey, it's time for you to start moving forward. If you want to talk to me, you can reach me at Kimberly, WSBILC@gmail.com, and let's have that chat. Let's talk about those dreams. Let's turn them into real goals. And of course, if you want more of your resource for success, you want to donate, please, to support the podcast. We have a Cash App you can support us on. It's $, at KMCLEMORE, or you can go to the website at www.WSBILC.com to do your donation to keep this amazing podcast show rolling. And again, we would all like to thank you all for listening to the show tonight. We will be back next week with more amazing guests, and be sure to follow us on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts. But until then, enjoy the rest of your evening and good night.
Facebook. Everybody jealousy, honey, please.